Imagine sitting astride a 1,000-pound animal, feeling its powerful rhythm as you approach a familiar jump. The sun casts long shadows across a quiet paddock, and everything feels like muscle memory. It is just another Friday practice. You are in complete control. Everything feels perfect. Then, in a single devastating heartbeat, that illusion shatters. Without warning, the horse violently refuses the fence. You are thrown from the saddle, hitting the dirt helplessly. But the nightmare doesn't end there. Before anyone can react, the massive animal crashes down, its half-ton body rolling directly over you with crushing force. This was the horrifying reality 25-year-old Chloe Christina Smith faced, a routine ride that transformed her lifelong passion into unimaginable tragedy. To understand the weight of this loss, you need to understand who Chloe Christina Smith was. She was 25 years old, a Swampscott native, a horse trainer, a farm owner, a young woman whose entire identity had been shaped by the equestrian world from the time she was old enough to hold reins. Friends, family, and the tight-knit New England equestrian community described her as bright, enthusiastic, and deeply passionate about the animals she worked with. She did not ride as a hobby, she rode as a vocation. She had built a life around barns, stables, early mornings, and the constant pursuit of better form over every fence she cleared. Her father, Jim Smith, spoke to reporters in the raw hours after the accident. He said she died living her dreams. That phrase carries a particular sting in cases like this because it captures both the beauty and the danger of a life spent in close partnership with animals powerful enough to cause severe harm. Khloe was not reckless. She was not inexperienced. She was a professional young woman doing what she loved on a horse she knew well, in a setting that should have been entirely within her control. Groton sits in northern Massachusetts, a rural community where horse farms dot the landscape and equestrian culture runs deep. It is the kind of place where riders train year-round, where jumps are rebuilt after every storm, and where the bond between horse and human is treated with almost spiritual reverence. On that Friday evening, the setting looked exactly like it had 100 times before. Open field, set course, warm light, two riders pushing each other to be better. But what makes equestrian sport so beautiful is also what makes it unforgiving. A horse is not a machine. It is a 1,000-pound animal with its own instincts, fears, and reflexes. When a horse refuses a jump, the rider has fractions of a second to adjust. Most of the time, the rider stays in the saddle, regroups, and circles back. But sometimes the refusal is sudden. Sometimes the horse stumbles. Sometimes the momentum carries both bodies into a space where gravity becomes the only law that matters. That is what happened to Chloe Smith. Cruzy refused the jump. The throw came immediately, and the fall was catastrophic in a way that practice sessions almost never are. The emergency response was rapid, but ultimately unequal to the damage. First responders reached the scene and found Chloe severely injured beneath her horse. The decision to call Boston Medflight was made quickly. She was airlifted to UMass Memorial Medical Center in Worcester, one of the region's top trauma facilities. Her family rushed to be with her. Loved ones gathered in the hospital, hoping that modern medicine could undo what a single moment in a Groton field had set in motion. But the injuries were too severe. Chloe Christina Smith passed away several hours later, surrounded by the people who had watched her grow from a girl who loved horses into a woman who built her life around them. She was 25 years old, and then the loss deepened. Because Booze Cruise, the horse she had ridden, the animal she had nicknamed and cared for, also suffered fatal injuries during the accident. The creature that had carried her through so many courses, that had been her partner in the sport she loved, did not survive the incident either. In the end, both the rider and the horse were victims of the same violent moment. The jump that should have been routine ended in an unimaginable tragedy for both of them. The Massachusetts equestrian community reacted with the kind of grief that only tight-knit professional worlds can produce. Tributes poured in from fellow riders, trainers, and farm owners who had known Chloe or known of her. She was remembered not just as talented, but as genuinely enthusiastic, the kind of young professional who brought energy into every barn she entered. Her death was not just a personal loss for her family. It was a wound to the entire network of stables, trainers, and competitors who understood exactly what she had been doing when the accident happened, and who knew that it could have been any one of them. Because that is the hidden truth of equestrian sport. The danger is not in the big events. It is not in the Grand Prix rings or the cross-country courses that make spectators gasp. The danger is in the routine. It is in the practice jump that goes wrong. It is in the familiar horse that spooks at a shadow. It is in the 1,000th repetition of a movement that suddenly, for no predictable reason, becomes the one that ends everything. Chloe Smith's case sits in a sobering statistical reality. Horseback riding remains one of the most dangerous sports in terms of injury rate per participant. The combination of height, speed, and the unpredictability of a large animal creates a risk profile that most other athletic activities cannot match. And while safety equipment has improved dramatically over the years, no helmet or vest can fully protect a rider from the severe impact of a fallen horse. Massachusetts law recognizes this inherent danger through its equine activity liability statutes, which note that equine professionals and sponsors are generally shielded from liability for injuries resulting from the inherent risks of horse-related activities. The law exists because the risk is understood to be built into the sport itself. Horses can act unpredictably, they can refuse jumps, they can fall. And when they do, the human body is fragile by comparison. But legal frameworks do not ease grief. They do not answer the question that haunts every rider who hears about a death like this. Why her? Why that jump? Why that horse? Why that moment? The answer, in most cases, is that there is no satisfying answer. Khloe was doing what she loved. She was riding a horse she knew. She was practicing a skill she had mastered. And then the variables aligned in a way that no amount of preparation could prevent. Khloe refused. The fall happened. The weight came down. And a 25-year-old life ended in a Groton field on a Friday evening that had started like any other. The aftermath has left her family planning a funeral they never imagined they would need to arrange. A service was scheduled for June 15, 2026 at Clifton Lutheran Church in Marblehead, with visiting hours the day before at Solemine Funeral Home in Lynn. The obituary noted that relatives and friends were respectfully invited to attend. But no invitation is needed for the grief that has already spread through the community. That arrived unannounced, the moment the news broke that Chloe Smith was gone. Her father's words that she died living her dreams will likely be repeated at the service. They will be printed in programs and shared by people who want to honor her passion. But beneath that tribute lies a harder truth that the equestrian community knows all too well. The dream she was living was also the risk that ultimately claimed her. The animal she loved was also involved in the accident that took her life. And the sport that gave her identity was also the circumstance that took it away. That is the paradox at the heart of every serious equestrian pursuit. The closer you get to the horse, the more skilled you become, the more confident you feel, the more invisible the danger becomes. Until one day it is not invisible anymore. Until one day a refusal at a routine jump becomes the last thing you ever do.